Starcast Network. Out of the shadows comes the best of indie podcasts. Well, you are listening to Castles and Cryptids, where the castles are haunted and the cryptids are cryptic as fuck. And I'm Alanna.
I'm Kelsey.
And we are on episode 102, which is hard for me to believe. But we did just
Right?
do the 100th. That one
Yeah.
was looming big in my mind.
Yeah. Now it's over and done with. Long forgotten about.
Maybe I made it a self-fulfilling prophecy because I did have a heck of a time editing it, as you all will have known if you listened to it.
Yeah.
um, because that was great when I dropped my audio, and then I had to maybe just try and
Yeah.
finagle with that.
Yeah, that was
It was
really
a
weird. Nothing was
yeah.
happening while we were recording. And
No.
we had recorded last week's episode early, so we didn't know that the audio was dropped on the 100th episode until after 101 was already recorded. So that's why
Yeah.
we didn't mention it last episode, I guess. Uh,
Oh, that's
but
true, because this is an
yeah.
episode ahead.
Yeah, we're finally ahead, guys, and then this happens. But yeah,
I
so
can't keep it
sorry.
straight when we're ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Alanna did her best to re-record her audio because we couldn't really re-record a guessing game of like
Yeah, and I had to say that I was like, it felt like recording a commentary at one
yeah.
point.
Oh,
Where you're just commentating on your past self. I mean, I will be editing and I'll, maybe you'll say something and then pause and I don't remember what I said and I'll be like, yeah, that person's crazy though. And then like I'll hear myself in the past
yes.
go, yeah, that's crazy though. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just so predictable.
I do that all the time to myself.
Yeah, okay, good.
The same thing. I'll hear it and I'll even say, "That's stupid," and then I'll say, "That's stupid."
At least you know it's a genuine reaction.
Yeah, we're
I
very
totally do that when I'm
consistent,
listening
I'll
to
have to say with
podcasts
that.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just funny because a lot of times it'll be exactly what we end up saying, and a lot of times we record and then, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 days later, you're trying to edit it, so you don't always remember every
At
detail of
least.
the case or what you said.
Oh, heck no.
So it's funny that the first thing that pops into your mind or what you end up saying is exactly what you said at the time of the recording. You're like, huh,
Damn, I get along with this Atlanta girl. We
yeah,
think the same.
is she my twin?
Yeah. Oh, it's and when you're listening to another podcast, you're like, I'm muttering to myself, to them,
Yeah.
sometimes, oh, I think it's kind of like this, or yeah, 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 yeah. And then it's almost like, well, they do call it like that parasocial relationship because you feel like you know them already, and people will often say that.
Uh-uh.
And then you're like, oh, wait, I guess it's not like they remember that conversation we had because I just talked to them when listening to them.
Yeah, they don't know my name.
We want to. We really do. So,
Yes. Would love to be able to get to know people better.
yeah, that is a cool thing. I like talking to people on social medias, all the Twitters. No. um, but one thing, some people like Night Classy, who I listen to, they do a cocktail hour on their Patreon where they do a little Zoom kind of meet
Oh,
with their
okay.
patrons that want to do it with them. Yeah, I've done it like probably only a couple of times because I just often it's on like a Friday, I think. So a lot of times we're recording and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But Yeah, it was really fun. It was just like, oh, we can just like sit
That's
and
cool.
hang out and have a drink, and everyone's just in their own little safe space. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I love it when people reach out for sure, for sure. And people will tell you too when you comment on their stuff. They're like, oh, or you share something. They're like, oh my God, thank you.
Oh,
I love that.
yeah, instant gratification. Nice.
No, but too, like, I shared a podcast the other day recently just on my own Insta, and they were like, oh my God, it means so much to us. And I was like, yeah, no worries. Like, I kind of know how it feels. Not that
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a senior podcaster now, but I remember there was
Well, 2
people that
years
like,
is good. Yeah.
yeah, and there was podcasters that on Instagram and stuff liked our stuff and gave us a
Yeah.
shout out, and he kind of took me under his wing and was like, "Do you know about all this stuff on Instagram and stuff?" And
Mhm.
podcast buddies are they're like real buddies, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't wait till I think we're gonna get to maybe collaborate with some soon, especially now that we have a lovely network that we can
Yes.
network with.
Very cool.
What are we talking about today?
Some paranormal families.
Ooh, I like paranormal
Yeah.
people and things and stories in general. And I like that because a lot of things can fall under that umbrella. And
Yeah.
sometimes, sometimes we just have some stories we want to tell, and it's like, okay, well, what can we make this? You know,
Yeah.
and find a few like that. And there's definitely a few stories like that out there, so I'm
Yeah, in my
excited.
research, I did end up finding one of the sources that had a little, I guess, one sentence, just little blurb that was like, and out of the people I chose, it was like, they're similar to these other families, and it lists like 7 other families, and I was like, ooh, save for later. Put that in my episode
Ooh.
ideas list, and I was like, there, reference for later. It's like for next
Yes.
time when I'm looking for if we want to revisit it, then I have like a little list already of different ones I can look up.
That's true. I like stuff that's just in the paranormal vein. Because,
Yeah.
like, I listen to a lot of, and that's why we drink. That was one of the first ones I ever really got into hardcore.
Yeah.
Hardcore! No, but like binged, and so the one does the true crime and the other does the the paranormal. So I like how a lot of things just fall into that category, whether it be a haunted house to a
Yeah.
possession case to the history of Ouija boards, some stuff that we've covered. Like, yeah, just there's so much that can
Yeah.
fall in that. And then sometimes when we're trying to think of a theme, I'm like, well, I'll have like a case, but maybe not exactly what the theme could be. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that can be fun too, trying to come up with something and then going with that theme.
Yeah. That's
I love a
amazing.
good theme. The only fun fact I can think of that I had written down that I vaguely know about things I learned this week from podcasts in this case. There's some lady that can ended up being able to smell out Parkinson's disease. So,
Oh.
yeah, her husband got sick with it, and for a while she, like told him that he stank because his smell changed, and she told him that
Oh,
he needed to
gee.
bathe and whatever, and he smelled different to her, so she would be like, "What the hell?" And then he eventually, I believe, got diagnosed, and she had gone to see him and he was at a support group for people that had it or something like that.
Okay.
And then the whole room smelled like it, and that's how they figured out that that's maybe what she was smelling. Then they like did a test with her where they had people wear like t-shirts so you couldn't see the person, and then like she would smell the t-shirts after, and some of them had been diagnosed and some of them hadn't.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, she got everything right. they said, "Oh, you didn't get this one right. He doesn't have Parkinson's yet." Until like a couple of days later, he was like, "I just got diagnosed," and they were like,
Oh, shit.
"Oh, well."
Oh,
Guess
yeah, but they do that with dogs and stuff, like,
yeah, I think I've heard of that.
diabetics support dogs that can smell your blood sugar levels, and,
Sure. If they can
uh
sense anxiety, like why the fuck not?
yeah, like, there's so many things, and yeah, I mean, if somebody has a really strong sense of smell, I'm sure they can end up realizing they can, like, pick up on different things like that. That's crazy.
It is crazy. It's a wonder that they ever figured out what it was. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. Very strange. I wonder if things like that have happened in the past, but nobody could figure out what the cause was. I'm just
yeah.
like, what'd you tell me I stink for? I use deodorant. You
Yeah, they
just don't
probably
love me
never would've
anymore. Sorry.
probably never would have known if she hadn't have gone to the support group and noticed
Yeah.
everybody kind of smelled like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because, yeah, I think she got used to it with him for however many years. And then it's like,
Wow.
well, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be weird if somebody's smell changed.
Yeah, like, I'm not
Like,
saying that I think it
more
was.
so than, like, their deodorant or something that they
Yeah,
changed.
I don't know if it was, like, horribly stinky, she just noticed it, which is
Yeah.
just weird, yeah, we don't have noses like
Hmm.
dogs, except maybe she does.
Yeah. Wow. We have to do another bizarre bodies one. Let's dive into more of that kind of stuff.
Very fascinating, yeah. I love I love an anomaly, whether it's a medical one or just a weird peanut candy I find or something that's like, "Ooh, this
Yeah.
lifesaver doesn't have a hole in it." Or whatever.
Right? I
Yeah.
opened up a pack of Kit Kats one time, like just the single little.
Oh,
It
okay.
was more than just the
Snack
Halloween
size.
ones. Yeah, it was like
Okay.
the full size Kit Kat where it's got four of them, I think.
Mhm.
And I think two out of the four had no wafer and were solid chocolate. And then the
Oh.
other two were like normal on the other side. So it was like waferless, waferless, and then regular, regular. And they were all attached together. And I was like, huh. I'm like,
Yeah. It's like one side's real heavy. You're like, "What?"
yeah. Not that it wasn't still good, but it's just like,
True,
what's
it's good
going
chocolate.
on? Yeah, I really love Kit Kats. And I discovered I read online that the inside of Kit Kats are filled with Kit Kats that get rejected. Like they basically pulverize them and that's like the filling of the new Kit
Sorry.
Kats. It's
They
like,
recycle the
yeah,
bits.
it's all like the
Oh.
wafery, like cream kind of that's inside of it is all just destroyed Kit
Yeah.
Kats that like didn't pass up to like their requirements, I guess. It's like, oh,
What the
cool.
heck? Somehow that's, like, very wholesome.
Right? So then they I know, it's upcycling. I like that. Leads to like no waste, basically, unless I guess they don't have enough rejected ones to meet the demands of the new ones. I don't know how that would
Eh.
work.
Like, wafer's not that expensive, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's funny. Kit Kat
Hmm.
facts!
Yeah.
That was an extra one. That was a freebie.
Yeah, things we learned this week. Except I didn't learn that this week. I learned that a long time ago and then relearned it because I'd forgotten it.
You made me. Okay, I think I remember another food fact that I may have jotted down. I can picture it on
Hmm.
its little yellow post it. Apparently, chicken nuggets were invented at Cornell University.
Oh God. Why?
I don't know. They were experimenting. That one I do not have more information for us, sadly.
No. We'll have to follow up.
I don't know if you want to do a deep dive on chicken nuggets. Wine and Crime did that, and they all got really
God.
disgusted. They were all
No
the
thanks.
week before going, last nuggets before we do the episode. They didn't want to.
I can't eat chicken nuggets anyway, at least not restaurant ones, so
Not McDonald's?
no.
Oh
Kill my
yeah.
stomach. I can't eat any of that stuff. So,
Yeah, that sucks. I mean,
yeah. I haven't
it's
had a chicken
starting to
nugget.
hurt my stomach now. Some of the
Yeah, I
stuff
haven't
is
had a chicken nugget in at least 8 years.
okay, is this like a can like what about chicken strips though? If it's not like super deep fried and it's more of a strip situation.
That's fine, typically.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Then I see reason to live. No.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
It's like the over processedness of
Mhm.
like chicken nuggets and a lot of fast food burgers. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah. That fake meat.
Yeah.
Oh, well, have you got a story for me?
Yeah, pardon me. It was my turn to burp. Uh I do
Something's coming
have a
back up.
story.
No. Sorry.
And again, oh, little Gordo foot. Sorry. His foot sticking out of the box. It's like on the ledge. And I'm like, I just need to pet it.
What if you had a little shoe you could put on it? Because he loves your shoes so much. He was so cute in that picture earlier on your stories.
I thought it was hilarious because he's laying on two of them and then he's got like his arm across the other two, like you can also not have these. Because
Very possessive.
he's normally only on two of them at a time. Even when
Yeah,
there's two
yeah.
pairs there. When I
On or
walked in,
in.
when he's like across them like this, like, no! I was like, oh my god, buddy. Yeah.
Well, would he probably not lay on all your shoes if you didn't keep most of them in the closet? Do you think
Oh,
he would just
he's
like roll all over them?
oh yeah, I'm sure it's him like trying to pick up my scent and smell the outside and stuff like that on my shoes.
Oh yeah, our dog will roll all over our bed and just kind of
Yeah,
like sniff it.
I have a video I took after he was shaved. I came home from work and I had taken off my shoes and I had worn them for a really a long time and like they were like sweaty, like you know when the inside you can just tell that the inside's kind of wet and you're just like these are real
Mm.
gross. I walked in, I think I went to the bathroom or something in another room, and I came back into the room and just had to run and grab my phone because he had his head shoved as far as he could into my shoe and he's like nuzzling like back and forth like oh yeah, trying to like get his head further into my shoe. I was like, what are you doing? Those stink. And then he
Oh,
like the end of the video,
it's
he pulls his head out and his eyes are like rolled in the back of his head and he's like, oh.
oh God.
And I'm like, did you get high off of my stinky feet?
I will. Yeah, I can't understand how Fen can lick our feet, but there you go.
Yeah, right?
Oh,
Yeah, we were talking about you.
I feel like I'm super dark. I'm in shadow. There we go.
All right. But anyway, this might be another long episode. We'll see. Mine's kind of
I don't know.
long. It's on the slightly longer side for me, but oh, he almost fell over. I do have a bit of an intro to it that's kind of a start to finish little excerpt of
Ooh.
one of the paranormal things that occur, I guess. Yeah.
I
So
like
I'm
that.
covering the Bangs sisters. So think fringe bangs. The Bangs. Uh the Bangs sisters. And
That's funny.
the
We're both doing
uh
sisters with like, is
yeah.
that their last name?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Because I'm
Yeah.
doing the Fox sisters, and that's their
Yeah.
last name. They didn't have to come up with any clever names because they already had cool names,
Right?
apparently.
Yeah. Bangs and Fox. The new detective agency, Bangs and Fox. Foxy Bangs.
Nice. That sounds like an Austin Powers character, like
right? Foxy Bangs.
because oh, uh there's a Foxy because Beyonce's character is oh
I can't
god,
remember.
she's Foxy something. Anyway, she's got a big afro in it. I'll figure it out.
Um, so this excerpt is from the physical mediumship of the Bang sisters and an examination of their precipitated spirit portraits, which we'll get into. This was
Spirit
written
portraits.
by N. Riley Haggerty. I'm not exactly sure when it was written, um, but it was quoted in a lot of the sources. So I was like, oh, people must really like this guy.
They love him. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't find it, but it came to me. It's Foxy Cleopatra.
Oh, okay.
If anyone
All I
wants to
could
know her
think of was
character
like
name.
Foxy Lady, and I was like, it's just like a saying. It's not a name.
Oh
I was like, I
no.
don't think.
They usually have to have them more, I want to say clever, but I don't know, crass. Like a
Yeah.
lot of vagina is the one of the first
Yes.
ladies. It's
Uh,
bad. But it's good.
um. So this starts. Yeah. So this is what. Yeah. N. Riley Haggerty wrote. Uh, it is August. The year is 1911. A large audience has filled to capacity the auditorium at the world famous Chesterfield Spiritualist Camp in the state of Indiana,
Oh,
America.
damn.
Yeah. They have come,
Chesterfield.
yeah. They have come to witness a demonstration of psychic power, one of the most unique and marvelous in the entire world. A select committee has arranged beforehand that upon entering the building, all have been given a numbered ticket, the stub of which is torn off and put into a large vat to be thoroughly mixed up. Later on, one stub will be randomly drawn from the collection.
Okay, so it's like a
Yeah.
raffle ticket sort of
Yeah, I
situation.
assume that. I picture that big, like, golden or silver drum that's like they
Yeah.
crank and then
Oh,
it all like tumbles or something.
yeah, and sometimes they have the balls in them, not the ballots.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like bingo? Are you thinking of bingo?
Is it bingo that has the
I
balls?
think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh,
All right.
Now, after a close examination by the committee to see that there are no markings or paint of any kind or signs of chemical treatment, a large plain canvas is placed on an easel in the center of the stage. The spirit mediums who will demonstrate the phenomenon now enter the auditorium. They are sisters and appear to be about 35 to 40 years of age. Both take their seats on the rostrum, one situated on each side of the easel and clearly 4 to 5 feet from it. They will never touch they will never touch the canvas throughout the entire demonstration.
Oh.
A member of the committee now reaches in, selects from the vat one ticket stub, and reads the number aloud to the audience. It belongs to a Miss Alice Alford. Miss Alford and her husband are now invited to come up and take a seat on the stage. They will be sitting for a portrait, but in this particular instance, the painting will not be of the Alfords. The artist and the subject of this session are from another dimension, the world of spirits.
Oh.
When all is ready, the mediums slowly bow their heads and close their eyes as if in prayer and deep concentration. The silence of the auditorium for 5 minutes is so absolute that the air itself seems to stand still. Suddenly, many in the audience lead forward in their chairs, sitting rigidly, their eyes tense and fixed on the canvas, from which a thin vapor-like cloud or shadow, it seems, sweeps across it, pulsates, and then flickers out. After a few more tense moments, shades of definite color begin to appear, as if successive layers of fine dust have been thrown or precipitated on the canvas to form a cloudy background, and this also seems to pulsate and flicker and then disappear quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird.
On, On and on it goes for several minutes. The otherworldly artist, it seems, is making preliminary sketches and trying out different color schemes. Suddenly, all at once, the background slowly and steadily now precipitates into view. Clearer and clearer it comes, only this time, with it, there is an astonishing addition. 3 pairs of eyes have suddenly appeared in different parts of the canvas, 2 of which are open, and the last, situated directly in the center of the canvas, are closed. The 2 open yeah, right. The
Sorry,
2
yeah.
the 2 open pairs immediately disappear and the closed eyes remain only to also instantaneously disappear. The audience gasps in astonishment. With each successive phase of the unfolding phenomena, the background becomes clearer and clearer, and now a faint outline of a face and bust slowly precipitates itself into view, disappearing and reappearing several times before remaining in focus on canvas. It is the unmistakable likeness of a young girl, perhaps 14 to 15 years old, and many in the audience are now standing, some pointing in wonderment. Gradually, the appearance becomes more clear and more distinguishable. She is transcendently beautiful, and her hair, clearly auburn brown, falls luxuriously on her bare shoulders, revealed by a white dress she is wearing that's having been pulled down. Around her neck, she's wearing a black onyx teardrop necklace, and pink roses surround the top of her dress as embroidery, and her eyes are closed.
Oh.
Yeah. With the portrait now having been completely precipitated on the canvas, to the utter and absolute astonishment of all, the eyes suddenly open, and the audience thunders in applause. To the front of the stage now steps the Alfords, clearly shaken by the experience, and Mr. Alford announces to the gathering that the portrait is an exact likeness of their deceased daughter, Audrey. The
No.
yeah, the Alfords, as it turns out, are a prominent family of the Marion, Indiana, and are not spiritualists in belief, and this is their first visit to Camp Chesterfield. Miss Alford wore around her neck, hidden from sight, a locket containing a photograph of her daughter, almost duplicate in likeness to the spirit picture obtained, but different in poise and position. The mediums had not seen the locket picture nor any photo of the child, nor had they ever made the acquaintance of the Alfords. The finished portrait was precipitated onto canvas in 22 minutes, and the spirit mediums of this extraordinary event, the Bang sisters. I think it's supposed to be, they say the Bang sisters. Yeah. It's like, ooh.
That's
I liked that.
weird.
I guess there's so many write-ups in this one. I read probably close to 25 pages of like accounts of like witnessing of like the precipitated art and what we'll get into called spirit writing that they did. It's
Hmm.
kind of insane. I left out most of them, I'd say, but they're pretty easy to find when you look them up, and they're kind of wild. Like when you start reading them, you're like,
Yeah.
Jesus, like it's
Oh,
crazy.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard this one, to be honest. It's like I've heard of things
Yeah.
like this. I would say mine is similar, but yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know
Yeah.
that I know this. Interesting.
It's fun then. Woo. So for their early life, I got most of this information from geniemagazine.com. This was like mostly quoted from them, saying that Elizabeth or Lizzie Snowbangs was born around 1859. Some things said 1860. Uh, but yeah, this one said 1859. They're to Mother Moreau L. Stevens Bangs and their father Edward D. Bangs while they were living in Atchins, Atchison. We have an
Did
Atchison, but
you?
this is spelled totally
Oh,
different. Atchison,
oh,
Kansas.
didn't I have a name like that? Did you also not think of? that Ricky Martin song when you were writing your whole notes like she bangs, she bangs.
No, not once.
What? This would be my entire problem during this case. I would be like,
Oh,
oh
no,
no. Well, you have a
not at
strong
all.
will. I heard one character in a book was like, it's like a radio I can't turn off in my head. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it's like.
I mean, sometimes, but not normally when I'm working on notes, so I don't think I've ever
Anything that
had
sounds
that.
like a song lyric. I don't know.
Oh. So after Elizabeth or Lizzie was born, they moved to Chicago around 1861, and then Mary May E. Bangs was born, seems like in Chicago around 1862 or 1863 or 4, somewhere around
Mm,
that time frame.
it's murky with
And
mine too.
yeah, their father was a tinsmith and a stove repairman, while their mother was a medium herself, and
Oh,
soon got her 4 children. So along with Lizzie and May were sons Edward and WB. I don't know if
okay.
WB is supposed to be an abbreviation. Oh, I think it's
Warner
William.
Brother. Warner
Warner
Brothers.
Brother. No, I think it's William. I think something said they had a brother named William later on. So it's probably
Mm.
William something. William B. Uh this was the only source that said that the kids were like she was a medium and then she got the kids into it, was this
Mm-hmm.
Genie magazine. It goes on to say, this was quoted from it, by the early 1870s, the Bangs family were performing seances as described in the August 3rd, 1872 Religio Philosophical Journal article by Stephen Sanborn Jones called An Evening with the Bangs Children.
Oh my.
Um,
It's like
the,
Psychology Today magazine.
yeah, religio psychological. Um, saying that
Rolls
people
off
would,
the tongue.
yeah, people would pay to be entertained at the Bangs' home. Messages from the dead would appear on slabs of slate as chairs and furniture would move about the room. The children were tied up in a cabinet. Then a guitar inside would strum and the hands would wave from within. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, sorry, I just like made a face and didn't say
Yeah.
anything for a minute because I was like, what?
Yeah, there's a lot to understand and unwrap in that single sentence. The children are tied up in a cabinet, then a guitar inside would strum, and then hands would wave from within, I guess. For the finale, Mary would bring forward a shaved cat that was said to be a spirit cat from the afterworld. Um, and
Okay.
then there's nothing else other than in the article it said in the summer of 1881, May and her mother were arrested for doing business without a license, and this was dismissed after they claimed to be evangelicists,
Mm,
and that such charges could not be brought against ministers. Unfortunately, they
sure.
ended up being fined by the police court the following day, so they were still charged.
Oh, okay, good.
But yeah.
That's
So
bullshit.
getting I kind of have like stuff about their professional lives and then a few little tidbits I found from one source about their private lives. So it's kind of like
Ooh.
private life sprinkled in, but this is mostly about
Yeah.
what they do later on in their lives. So,
Yeah, I get that. Different articles will have different things. Like Britannica's just gonna
yeah.
give you the facts. They don't
Yeah.
give you any of the fun stuff. No.
Um so this getting into their spirit writing, I guess that they did. Lizzie and May specialized, I guess they called it direct writing, and then later on they specialized as well in direct drawing and painting, which we'll get to. So how the direct writing worked, it said that in sealed, this is kind of like a rundown quickly. In sealed envelopes that were written by the sitters. So they would write out essentially a bunch of questions in
Mm-hmm.
ink on paper, seal it in an envelope, and the sitter then placed the envelope between a pair of slates and then would hold
Okay.
them under their hand while the medium sat on the opposite side of the table, and after waiting a minute or a few minutes or up to even an hour, there was like raps or knocks that would signal that the message was ready.
Okay.
um Going into more detail, and there's also so many more, as I said, like descriptions of people's exact experiences. This was
Mhm.
one of them I found from encyclopedia.com, saying an early slate writing seance with Lizzie Bangs was described by A.B. Richmond in, I think this must be something he wrote, saying, "What I saw at Casadaga Lake in 1888 just rolls up the tongue. Casadaga."
It kind of does. That rhymes a bit.
He wrote, quote, "Soon I heard a faint noise between the slates. It did not sound like writing, but more like the crawling of an insect imprisoned between them. In a few moments, there
Huh.
came three distinct raps. I opened the slates and found two messages written in the Morse alphabet, one of them signed by the one to whom the interrogatory, it's supposed to be like the questions basically were directed, and
Yeah.
who could not in this life read or write telegraphy. Telegraphy. I think that just is the Morse alphabet, because that's how, like, it's written in Morse code. But he's saying that
Oh,
the person
okay.
he wrote it to didn't know how to read
Hey,
or write in Morse code.
rude. We don't all know how
Yeah,
to
I
read and
don't.
understand Morse code.
Um, and it
Maybe we should
also
all
said,
just get taught SOS at least in schools. That
yeah,
would be helpful. I know Ressa,
uh,
my sister knows it for she's in the Navy, and I think she had to learn it as part
uh,
of that. And then we might have talked about it on here with the Ottawa History Museum or whatever. It had Morse code windows.
oh yes,
Yeah,
yeah, we
I
did.
can't remember what they spelled out, but I was like, that's cool. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, so one of the letters that he received back, or messages, was written by that gentleman, and then the other one was written by a prominent jurist, uh, who had died a number of years ago, I guess. So, like, somebody, I don't know if it was somebody
A
that,
what? A
it says
prominent.
jurist, like jury, like a jurist.
Okay, okay. That's
I don't know.
interesting. That's kind of what I thought, but then I was just like, did I mishear that?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Um,
That's what he does for a living, I guess.
yeah. Oh, this was one of the little peppers of their personal lives, saying on April 2nd, 1888, two plainclothes police officers arrested the sisters during a seance and confiscated all their props. They were released on bail the next day by their brother William, who was embarrassed. Apparently, he's really embarrassed about this. William was
Oh,
the manager of the
brothers.
Chicago club. And while they were out on bail, Lizzie's 7-year-old daughter died. Um,
Oh no.
so yeah, I don't have any more information about that.
Dang.
Um, yeah.
So she was out on bail while her own daughter died, you said? Or
Yeah. So like they were,
huh, okay.
yeah, they were out of prison when she died.
That sucks though.
According, yeah, according to the Chicago Daily Tribune, in March 1890, a Chicago grand jury declined to bring charges against the Bang sisters. But later, in May of 1891, the Illinois Senate passed a bill that stated prohibiting anyone from personating the spirits of the dead, commonly known as spirit medium seances, on penalty of fine and imprisonment. So
Oh
they
my
do get
gosh.
arrested a number of times, which I don't really get into it because it was like, okay. Um,
Wow. That's crazy though.
yeah.
People just be trying to outlaw anything they don't like,
Yeah.
even if something like this most of the time is potentially not even harmful. Like,
Yeah. Um, another little like personal tidbit was that in November 1890, by this point, May was finishing up with her second divorce. Um,
All
I don't
right.
know. I don't know about the first one, but this is the second one. This time it was from a wealthy manufacturer who had married her under the pretense that his dead wife had told him to marry her. So take that
Because she told
for
him
what
that?
possibly. It happens more
Ooh.
than once that one of them
Yeesh.
gets married because a dead relative tells them to marry one of the sisters. And every time it happens, the man is extremely wealthy. So.
My only question is, do they actually have an attraction? Because if if you do, you're you're gonna make any excuse to see the other person regardless. Like, but
I don't know about that
that
one. I'll
was
say for the second one that happens later on, I think it was purely for the money, at least from the side of the sisters. Cause
and how many
yeah,
people can you convince that your dead wife was like, you guys would be perfect together?
I don't know. Um,
Didn't that happen on Modern Family? Phil's dad. Anyway, his
I don't know.
his mom dies, and then he's like, "Oh, I found out that she always thought that you'd be perfect with this person." It's like, oh my god, she was like trying to take care of her husband even in
Oh,
death, and be like, "You would this lady would be good for you." It was
oh,
like,
weird.
oh, it is weird, but it was kind of sweet. I don't know.
Yeah. So going on to the paintings, as I kind of talked about from the excerpt, these are different ones. So the direct spirit portraits that the sisters produced starting in 1894 were in full color and completed in front of the sitter. At first, they used a locked box or a curtained off space and like for the picture to be produced, and then after they evolved to doing it completely out in the open where the paintings appeared as if by airbrush in sometimes as little as 8 minutes, um which
So
is
on
pretty
stage and
crazy.
stuff, they would be
Yeah, but most of the times they did them at people's houses, or at
okay.
their
Yeah,
house. Yeah. And
yeah. I
at
can't
the
see you selling that many
time,
shows if it's like all covered up like it was at the beginning.
yeah. Um so the I should have like did time money converter. This would be insane because this was in 1894. The picture, like these paintings that they produced, they charged between 15 and $150. And then the most expensive were multiple portraits that were that they charged $1,500 for, that was paid by a Dr. Isaac K. Funk, who we'll get to later. He was like a big supporter. Dr.
And
Funk,
he's bunky.
yeah, he's a big supporter of the Bang sisters. But think in like 1894, how much $1,500 would have been? That's insane.
Yeah, true. True.
Like,
Probably like
yeah,
several thousands at least.
yeah. And then so here's how like the ones happened at their house. This is from encyclopedia.com. It said the arrangement was as follows. Two identical paper mounted canvases in wooden frames were held up, like face to face, against the window. The lower edges were resting on the table, and the sides would be gripped each by one of the sisters in one hand. So they're just holding them like kind of clamped together, and the bottom of the two canvases that are pressed together are sitting on the table. A short curtain was hung on either side, and an opaque blind was drawn over the canvases, with the light streaming from the window coming from behind, and the canvases were translucent, so you could completely see through it from the window. Like the light would shine through the canvases. Um,
Okay.
After a quarter of an hour, the outlines of shadows began to appear and disappear as if the invisible artists were making a preliminary sketch. This is from the same thing. No, that's wrong.
It's funny because when you were saying about the canvas, I literally just remembered how you were saying they used a paper, something that was hidden under a slate, and I was like, "Oh, I was gonna say, does everyone know what a slate is?" Because that's before they had like pen and paper. That's what they would use in the classrooms. It'd be like a little
Yeah.
piece of slate that they could write with their little chalk on, and like a little premature, like the early version of a tablet. Like
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I
The
think we had them at
original
the old
tablet.
schoolhouse at King's Landing. Yeah,
Um,
but
I thought
sorry.
this description was better, but I guess it was like a mixture of that and then talking about back my intro. I don't know how that came in, but
Mm.
I'm sure there's like more of it later. Yeah, it was
Um.
like really
Okay.
weird how they did it. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah. So yeah, like it would come through, and I guess it probably talks about when I talk about people trying to debunk them and say that they were able to replicate it and like this is what they did. But
Yeah.
um the Bang sisters also produced these precipitated portraits in public halls before great audiences. A bunch of flowers were often a frequent occurrence too on like other portraits. It would come out as flowers and stuff instead of always people. Objects would
Weird.
disappear in from the pictures as well, and chemical effects like ink changing into dirty water were also witnessed. So there's different witness statements you can find of people saying that even after they took the portraits home, they continued to change.
Oh my
Like
god.
like the clothing that the person would wear in the portrait would change and their
No.
hairstyle would change. Really creepy. Yeah.
It's bad enough when their eyes follow you around the
Yeah.
room.
There was a lot of talk of that as well.
That's
Um
weird. I
yeah,
don't.
people were like, yeah, cuz it wasn't like even if they were asked to bring a picture, it would never leave their pocket and stuff like that, but the
Hmm.
portrait was never of that picture. It was of that person in a different pose wearing different clothes. So sometimes if they saw the picture at the end and were like, "Oh, well like they always had this pin or they always wore their hair like this." And they didn't even have to tell the sisters that. They would just think that by the time they took the portrait home, it had changed so like they had the pin or their hair was like that, like they always wore it.
Oh my
And like
god.
it yeah, really creepy
That's
stuff.
yeah. That would be hard to explain. First of all, in a lot
Yeah.
of ways, in general, but also I'm
There was a
thinking
lot
when
of
you.
those. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if it's just some, well, not necessarily just some act, but you get the acts, and they're a medium, but they're also a bit of a mentalist
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
maybe a psychic also knows how to pick someone out in a crowd and say, or just be like, "Oh, I feel like someone died near you. That's a man," or that starts with their name starts with M, or
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, and that's just like kind of bound to catch on something. But this seems to go a little above and beyond that, if that's the
Yeah.
case, that it's changing
Yeah. It
afterwards,
was
and after
creepy
they've
reading
ever
those
said
ones.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is where it is. In 1907, May married a millionaire leather manufacturer after he was told to marry May by his dead mother. It's the mother this time. Um,
Okay.
and according
Was she just
to
like, "What's your mother's name?"
I have
Margaret.
no idea.
Margaret says that you have been
Mary
unhappy
May.
for too long, and you believe you should should be happy with me.
Uh, it said, according to a July 1909 story, again in the Chicago Daily Tribune, he was divorced and penniless less than 2 years later. And he was a millionaire.
Oh.
Yeah, a millionaire by 1907 standards. And they took him
Did
for
she
all
leave
his
him
money.
then? She was
Yeah,
like,
she
"Oh,
divorced him and he was penniless 2 years later.
I
So that
guess
one,
if you get
I do not.
half." Oh no.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't think that one was for love. Uh
Yeah, that's questionable at best.
so going into the, I guess, debunked category, which is also kind of fun. I love people trying to figure out how things work, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So it was saying in 1901 there was a psychologist named Stanley Lefebvre, Krebs, 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 and he was ended up being the one that exposed the sisters as frauds, or claimed he did. He had employed a
Okay.
hidden mirror somewhere. I don't have a lot of information about this, and he had caught them removing a blank letter that was sealed between two of the slots or slates,
It's
and
like,
um, caught one of the sisters, I guess, writing a reply, which they would then pretend that the spirit had written. Um,
okay, okay, okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So supposedly they're
yeah,
supposed to be like sitting on these, not writing on them, and then she grabs a
yeah.
slate and it's like their
Well,
little
no,
chalk
like the
painting.
no the like the sitter is writing on a letter, like they're writing questions. The questions are on
Okay.
paper that are inside an envelope that are in between the slates, and they were
Mm-hmm.
caught removing the paper from between the slates and like opening the envelope and like writing the response to those
Yeah.
questions, I guess,
That
in this
that doesn't
mirror.
look good.
No. um and you know Dr. Funk has to come back because I already mentioned him once. He had
We got the funk.
funk.
Gotta have that funk. Okay.
um he multiple times really investigated the sisters several times himself, and he ended up fully believing in their powers and like what they did. Um, there was a Hereward Carrington.
Oh
He tries to
my.
debunk them a whole lot. One of the times he tries to debunk them, he visited them in 1909, and he says he found them to be frauds. He says that he had tested them by addressing a letter in the sealed envelope, uh, and he addressed it saying, "Dearest Mother Jane Thompson." And like this wasn't his mom's name. This person, in his like knowledge at least, didn't exist. And after the spirit writing session, he received a reply addressed from dearly loved son Harold that would be signed by dearest mother Jane Thompson. So because
No,
that
they
person was
took the
made up,
bait.
yeah.
They fell
He
for it.
also a separate time wrote a letter that a David P. Abbott had successfully, I don't know who he wrote this letter to, but he wrote that there was this gentleman named David P. Abbott who had successfully duplicated the Bang sisters phenomena using complete like trickery. Didn't really
Okay.
get into details about how. He was just like, we duplicated it like 100%, and you guys are liars. Uh,
All right.
cool, thanks. Going back to the side of like agreeing with the sisters is Admiral W. Eushborn Moreau, who many had many sittings with the sisters in 1909 and
Hey.
again later in 1911, and he came to their
Mhm.
defense. There's lots of accounts by Admiral Moreau, like visiting
Ooh.
um, their house and everything. He had replied that he had completed his own like set of tests with the sisters and knew of the method that they claimed had been used by this Abbott character to recreate their skills. And he said that the sister's skill was far and beyond almost every conjuring trick that he had ever witnessed, and that the conditions of
Okay.
the tests by Mr. Abbott were as different from those of the seances of the Bang sisters as, and I love this, a locomotive is to a teapot. It's
Oh, okay.
basically like saying you in test conditions were able to duplicate is different than saying you could do it while performing a seance at your house. You know?
It kind of just makes me think of Shroot Bucks on The Office, and Stanley's like, Like, what, you don't care about Shroot books? No, and he's like, one Stanley nickel is equal a unicorn. No, I don't know what he says, but
I don't
basically.
remember that.
Oh, it's good.
And he also said this, Admiral Moreau also says that, uh, oh, he said that it was a conjuring performance with the sisters is what was finally able to convince him that the Bang sisters were genuine in what they were doing. I didn't really
Oh.
find any, like, what this conjuring performance is supposed to be. I'd like to know more about that. Um,
So he
so
doesn't just mean the performances they're already putting on with the painting?
I think this is something different, but I didn't find anything else
Hmm.
about what the conjuring performance, what he could mean by that.
Conjured up the
Um,
Conjuring movie this time.
so Admiral Moore outlined in these investigations, I think this was a book or something he wrote, I'm not too sure, um, was entitled Glimpses of the Next State. That was released in
Oh,
1911. And
cool
he
name.
said, yeah, he said in this that he once took his own slates and ink pot to one of the sittings, and on the advice of a different gentleman, he had laced his ink with lithium citrate. And
Oh.
yeah, which I assume is not typical to be used in ink. So he was trying to test, like, if it was his ink that would end up in the envelope. And once he got his 8-page message back that had been signed by his supposed spirit guide named Lola, um,
Okay.
yeah, that's what it said, Lola.
Just cuz I was like, that was not the name I was expecting for a spirit guide, but all
Ah,
right. Her
yeah.
name was Lola. She was a showgirl.
Um, so him and this other guy took the ink from his messages and they analyzed it using spectrum analysis and discovered that lithium was present on the ink on the pages. So it like determined that yes, that was like
Oh.
the ink. So that kind of, at least in his mind, debunked the people that were saying there was like a little like opening in the table. It was really bizarre. People were claiming that between the slates, when they put the letter in there, the sisters would like fish it out with like fish line that was clear, and like it would come through the little opening in the table, and then they would drag it across the floor. Like, who would not notice a letter dragging across the floor? Out the room under like the
Okay.
closed door, and they would go into the other room, like sign, fill out the letter, and then somehow reverse that and get it back into the slates. And it's like, I don't really buy that because that seems kind of weird. But
I- Yeah,
who,
I've only heard a
who
few of
wouldn't?
those things where the magician reveals their tricks, but it seems a little bit like they could have done it easier somehow. Just
Yeah.
already have a letter they could switch out a little faster.
Yeah, that was another thing too. But I was like, who wouldn't notice an envelope fucking dragging across the carpet out of the room? Like,
Yeah, 'cause they
that's a
don't.
little much.
Yeah, I guess they put maybe they have the lights off, but still, like, make some noise, like.
Yeah. Yeah, or if maybe
Uh,
one of them was under the table, but it didn't really, none of the things really talk too much about there being like a tablecloth or something like that that they
I
could
mean,
have hidden under.
granted, it was.
Um,
I will say it was easier to fool people back then because it's not like they
yeah.
had. We could record it or whatever. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, all we can
And
do
it
is
did say
see. Yeah.
it did say that a lot of times, other than the spirit portraits and them setting it up, there was normally only one sister in the room, like when they did these. So people were kind of like, well, the other one
Okay.
definitely could have been working on the ladder from like another room or something.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so from Admiral Moore, There was further investigations again. This time, a different test he conducted that included laying his visiting card on top of the slates after he tore a corner off of it. Um,
Okay.
he had also wrote his questions on a separate piece of paper and placed it with the visiting card. And it said that the after the writing session was done, the questions ended up in the envelope where they should have been before, but he hadn't placed them there, and that the card that was inside the envelope um was actually found inside of his hat that was in another room. So like
Oh,
the card he put in the envelope ended up in his hat in the other room, and then what he was holding ended up in the envelope basically. It's like, huh. Like,
but that wasn't what they told people they were going to do as the purpose of the trick.
no. But he was trying to kind of like fool them or like test them, I guess, and whether or not they were
Yeah.
aware of it, this is what happened. So that's kind of strange.
It isn't. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to process it. I'll probably, if I edit
Yeah,
this
right.
later, be like still processing it.
That's why I left
Weird.
out a lot of the, I guess, accounts
Oh.
of what happened because it was a lot of, and then this appeared, and then it disappeared, and then this appeared, and then it disappeared. I was like, it's too much the same.
Yeah.
I read like 25 pages
Hmm.
of them, and I'm like, holy shit, they all say the same thing.
Yeah,
But
I
like,
could see that a lot in these like stories from the spiritualism movement. And there's always like, I don't know, a lot of explanations on how they did things,
yeah,
and you're like, yeah, there's still a lot of explanations on how they could have been doing it behind the scenes. It's interesting though, but yeah, there's a lot. You
yeah.
can't write it all down.
Um, oh, oh, the next few things talk about, uh, and I said the pictures changed. This is what was talking about it. So this was from
Mm.
encyclopedia.com, and it says in regards to the paintings, Moore or Admiral Moore noticed that his experiments that in his experiments that details were added if he did not look, and once he mentally desired that a gold locket should be enlarged and decorated with a monogram, and he noticed that the thing was done as requested. uh, he had also often brought his own frames. He had sealed the window himself and searched the premises and closely watched every movement in the room of the sisters and everything going on. Yet the picture was obtained as before, so they appeared the same as before. Like,
Okay, so he
yeah.
also wanted the thing to be monogrammed, and then it was?
Yeah. So he wanted something in the picture to change, and it did. Another
Weird.
another thing, this was kind of interesting, saying that the most spectacular direct writing demonstration by Lizzie Bangs was the direct operation of a typewriter. This was kind of crazy. It was described by Custer Vitae in
Oh,
light. It kept
that
talking
guy.
about
No,
it
I
kept
don't know.
talking about in light, and then it would always say a year, and I'm like, is that a publishing magazine or something? Light, like light was like a publishing paper or
Like
something. I don't know.
capital Light?
Yeah, it kept, I don't know, it probably showed up like 50
Hmm.
times in my notes. I was like, what the fuck is light? In light.
Yeah, the way if
It's
that was
something.
keep they were keep quoting it, it almost sounds like a time period, but I honestly can't
Yeah.
say that I
No,
know
it
what
said
that means.
it was must have been published or whatever it is in January 25th, 1896, saying that the
Okay.
typewriter machine kept on working when it was even held up in the air by four of the men present, and the hands that were alleged to have done the work also materialized. So, like, the typewriter was typing
God.
direct writing while it was being held in the air, and nobody was touching it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of shit you want to get on camera.
Yeah, exactly.
That a piano playing itself, like that's the good stuff.
Yeah. Um,
Damn.
On the other side, in his investigations of the sisters' phenomena, this Carrington guy, oh yeah,
The
refers to
funk
an expose.
phenomena. Sorry.
What?
Don't you have a guy named Funk? I said the funk phenomena.
Oh, that's not him. No.
No, I'm just making a stupid joke. Never mind.
Okay. He referred to an expose regarding the letter writing that was inside a sealed envelope. It said that the writer claims to have seen the tricks by means of a small hand mirror that was held beneath the table. He found that under cover of the writing pad, placed against the edges of the slate resting on the table, May Bangs, one of the sisters, wedged open the slate by means of a small rubber wedge. The letter, when abstracted, was dropped on a sort of gridiron arrangement that lay on the carpet. It was promptly drawn backward under a slit in the door into the next room, where Lizzie Bangs, the other sister, steamed the envelope open, and in the meantime, the ink in the cup that was sitting on the desk would have had time to evaporate, so it would appear to have been used up. Because they kept ink
Okay.
right by the thing. Yeah, that's why I'm like, I left a lot of these out because it's kind of confusing to follow.
A little bit. Sorry.
Yeah. After I read 25 pages of them and they started to make sense, but it was still like, what the fuck? Um,
It's elaborate. Like there whatever's
yeah.
going on. I mean, if they're doing
Um,
this on their own, which it kind of sounds like, yeah, there's a lot going into it.
yeah. As I kind of said, over the course of their careers, the sisters were charged with fraud multiple times, starting in their pretty early lives. In 1880 and 1891, they were seized as masquerading materialized spirits. Would like to know what that means.
Fraud.
Um,
You said there was ghosts.
yeah,
Such a
basically.
fancy way to say it. Yeah, it sounds like.
Um, and then in 1890, there was a Colonel Bundy that charged them in the Religio Psychological Journal
Oh
with
my
fraud
god.
slate writing. Um,
The organization without a cool acronym. No.
yeah,
That's from Phineas and Ferb. But seriously, it's so long.
yeah. There's a Dr. Richard Hodgson, who had made a thorough investigation of the respective documents, and his findings were against the mediums. Again, from
Oh.
Light in 1899. What the fuck is Light? Drives me
In
crazy.
Light 1899?
No, from
Hmm.
Light. I think it just says
From
Light
Light.
1899. Like,
Hmm.
fuck you. What is Light? Um,
What even is light? What is
yeah.
time? No, don't.
Um,
I'll start.
there was a number of testimonies vouching for the sisters and like against the sisters. Uh,
Hmm.
oh
Public
yeah,
opinion is divided.
there is like so much more. If you want to read any of the testimonies, or the people that did, or I guess more about Admiral Moore and the Carrington guy, them trying to debunk the sisters. There's huge write ups and like all the steps they took to do that. Um,
Okay.
that was from the Society for Psychical Research. I found some of my stuff from their website. Yeah, there was a page
The
about the Bang sisters.
PSR? No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard of it.
and from Portraits from Beyond, also written by N. Riley Haggerty, who I took my excerpt from at the opening. He basically summarized like all of the tests and all of the accounts that I found in every other source. He had them all laid out really well. Really cool to read. They're on, I think if you go to the Psychical
Hmm.
website, it has everything on there.
Good for you
Um,
for pronouncing that correctly. I remember they had a hard time with that at first on the, and that's why we drink.
well, you said it the one time when I didn't get it, so now I
Oh,
remember it. Yeah.
well, it sounds a lot like cyclical to me, which I'm like, I know these are different words, but you don't use
Yeah.
them a lot, either of them. So, you know,
Yeah.
It's just confusing.
Um, I tried to find any portraits of from the Bang sisters. I could
Mm-hmm.
really only find one, but I couldn't confirm that it was actually from them, so I didn't save it. And then I only found one like good picture of the sisters, and it's like a really old, terrible black and white photo. But again, it's like the late 1800s, early 1900s, so not great for photography anyway.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, up till today, there's a collection of portraits of the like precipitated portraits that they did that were produced by the Bang sisters, and they're preserved in the gallery at Het Gallery, um, at the Spiritualist camp in Chesterfield, Indiana, where they did that
Oh.
like one reading with the um, fuck, what was their name? That family, the
I remember you
Alfords.
mentioning Chesterfield, but that's all I can
Yeah,
remember right now because I love that word. It's kind of weird.
yeah, the Alford family. So when they did
Oh,
that, like
yeah.
that spiritualist camp has a bunch of their precipitated portraits, they're called, that are on display at the Het Gallery, which is pretty
Hmm.
cool. I hope they're still there. Yeah, but I couldn't find any pictures of any of them, so I'm like, I don't know if it's open to the
Yeah.
public or not. People just not taking pictures when they visit, I guess. I don't know. None of them are on Google, but
God damn it.
yeah, that's all I
It's
got.
Oh, that's really cool. I don't remember hearing about them. I've heard
Yeah.
spiritualism era stories like this. Mine for this week is set in that similar first era, I guess, and
Yeah.
all that, but I don't know. It's just like the whole drawing and the paintings and the uh,
Yeah.
what sorry, I'm gonna forget the word that you kept using for the because um
It's precipitated.
I was literally going to be like pictorial, and then I was like, no, you know it. It has to do with precipitation because literally, like, sometimes when I talk about Rain's name, it's like, yeah, rain, like as in precipitation. I still couldn't remember the word precipitated. Like, why did that have to pick
Yeah.
such a big word? That's an interesting term to use. And
Yeah, I
it
don't
does
really
only apply
understand.
to them specifically, I wonder. It's like,
No, that's like the name for, I guess, what they were doing.
because
Like,
I've heard when you talked about writing and stuff, I was like, I've heard of automatic writing where
mm-hmm.
people, whatever, like let the spirit flow through their writing arm or whatever the heck, however it works, and just write things without really knowing. But yeah, this is like drawing things without knowing,
Yeah, basically.
and the drawings
Um,
change and are
yeah, it was
creepy.
creepy. People were like, yeah, you'd even that Riley Haggerty guy was saying that
Okay.
he visited somebody that had one of the portraits, and he witnessed like as he was walking around the portrait change, and it was like decades
Uh,
after, and it was like, that's fucking creepy. He's like, yeah, I was looking, and like its head would turn, and like you was talk about eyes following it, its head
nope.
kept turning, and every time he went to a different area in the room, its like head kept turning to like stay looking at him. I was like, I don't
Yeah,
like.
that does not seem normal.
Like, no thanks.
Unless
Yeah.
you're on acid. I can see the eyes following you. That can be seen in a lot of different portraits, but if
Yeah.
the whole head is turning, something is wrong.
Yeah, that's fucking creepy. And then it crawls out like the Grudge, or the
Oh.
Ring. But
Actually, I think when you said crawls out of, and then I thought painting, then I thought of Friends when oh the later seasons then Phoebe has this artwork and she kind of made them herself and she want it ends up being like Rachel and Monica fight because they don't want them in their house, but she's like, I made this one for you, her name is Phyllis, and she's like crawling out of the frame. She like it's not like this flat portrait, it's like this kind of weird paper
yeah,
mache thing that's like
I remember
sorry,
that.
I'm moving everywhere trying to show Kelsey, but it's not making sense.
No, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's silly. Anyway, that's what I'm picturing now. No.
Oh, okay.
No, that was crazy. I don't remember hearing about them, and that was a really good job. Thank you.
Yeah, I had fun reading the accounts. I highly recommend if you're interested in the stuff, going and reading the accounts they have on it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Even the people trying to
There's
debunk them, the lengths they went to, the kind of tests they set up, and very elaborate and crazy. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, just interesting stuff to read.
And did you learn anything about the Bangers sisters while you were doing the research?
The Bangers sister.
When I texted you, I was like, "Oh, you're doing them? Doesn't that a band or something that sounds like the Bangers sisters?" Never mind. And
Oh
I
no.
thought you said it kept coming up when you Googled it.
No, it kept trying to autocorrect from bangs to bands. The bands sisters.
Bands.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I'm. Okay, hang on. I'm like, I'm sure it's something. Well, uh, The Bangers Sisters was a 2002 film. I honestly was like, I think it's a band, but anyway, I thought that's what it kept autocorrecting to, the Bangers Sisters. So I apologize
No.
anyway.
No, my
Yeah,
phone was just trying to say the band's
the
sisters when I typed
Band
in when I
Sisters.
went to tell her. Yeah. I
Weird,
don't know.
weird. Well, get ready. We'll take a quick break and then hear about some more paranormal sisters.
Yeah.
All right.
My name is Keely, and I host a true crime and paranormal podcast called Misty Mysteries. Misty Mysteries takes a special focus on unsolved cases and missing persons cases. All of my true crime episodes are made in hopes to raise awareness and bring justice to those who need it most. Most of these episodes are made in partnership or made with the families of the victims and missing people. But the podcast isn't always true crime. Sometimes I bring spooky content like hauntings, aliens, and cryptids, such as the original story of the Conjuring House, the life of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and Mothman. True crime and paranormal even cross at times to make two-part episodes, like the Bobby Mackey Music World, the Lizzie Borden House, and the Villisca Axe Murder House. Misty Mysteries is ready to be binge listened to with over 50 episodes anywhere you get your podcasts. I cannot wait to keep you company whenever and wherever you like to listen to your podcast.
We are back.
Yeah.
And you just would have heard a promo from our new friends at Misty Mysteries podcast, who are very cool, and you should go check them out. I listened to an episode she did on celebrity ghost encounters. That was fun. I like that kind of stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So this is about the Fox sisters. Now Pat's singing. I don't know. We're winning the hockey game. He's doing the celebratory chants. Anyway, the you know how? No, you probably don't know. But
No, I don't follow sports at all.
no, but like different stadiums have different chants sometimes. Anyway, it's stupid. It's fine. If you ever at our house, we're watching the Oilers and they score at home, the whole audience goes, oh, 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 oh. Like that's our thing. It's stupid, I know.
Oh, okay.
Oh no. So, okay, mine has an intro also to
Fun.
set the stage. I know. So spiritualism. It's so fun. How did we both end up here? Because I was like, I want to talk about them, and then we are like paranormal people and stuff. There's so many good ones. One of the I definitely scammed this up. One of the articles I read, and it was talking about how on July 13th, 1930, Arthur Conan Doyle made an appearance at his own memorial seance.
Oh,
After he was dead.
that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, they were like, let's try and call him back. He was into this stuff.
Yeah.
And that it did happen with a few people. I've definitely heard that about like Houdini. He dabbled in it too and like had on and off again love-hate relationship with spiritualism where he like at one point I remember wanted to believe it was super real and other times was trying to debunk it and always
Yeah.
said that if he could come back that he would like tell his wife this one word so that they would know it was him, and that kind of stuff is just so mysterious and romantic. So anyway, this is the kind of times we're talking about for sure still. um Arthur Conan Doyle was said to have made an appearance, or so said medium Estelle Roberts, who claimed that she saw him there at his memorial. She claimed that he'd made good on his deathbed promise to come back after death and prove that spirits could talk to us. So we have
Interesting.
her word for it. But if he said he was going to do it, why shouldn't he? And it's kind of ironic because the author of Sherlock, as he was, Arthur Conan Doyle, was no skeptic necessarily. um, in fact, he believed in many aspects of the paranormal and parapsychology, such as clairvoyance, telepathy, telekinesis, and fairies in the garden. So,
Okay, I didn't know that before.
yeah, I guess he was open-minded to a point. Um, Also, is Gordo okay? I saw his little ear and I tried to pet it on
Oh,
my screen. I was
no,
like,
he was just like getting down off of the desk and leaving the room.
oh. Me, I'm like, touchscreen. I'm just gonna pet this kitty. That'll work.
I sometimes wish he would uh I guess if I could sit out more maybe he would like he'd try and like curl up on my lap or something when we record and then
Hmm.
it could be like he could be sitting here and I could just pet him, but not once has he ever made any attempt to get on my lap while we're recording.
He will not cooperate. No, I feel you.
Yeah. If I'm on the couch, he wants on my lap immediately. But
Totally.
nowhere else. Nowhere else in my house does he want to be like on top of me.
I didn't want my dog up on the bed this morning. Well, because we usually put an extra blanket on top of our comforter so that his dog hair doesn't get all over everything, because we
Mhm.
do let him jump up there. But we hadn't put that comforter on, and just Pat was downstairs and I was still in bed and I heard him come in the room and I was like, hi Fan, and then I heard him just chung, chung, jump up on the bed and I was like, no. I didn't put the dog blanket up yet, what are you doing? But
Yeah.
I think he was lonely this morning because Pat took his car in to get the winter tires off. So he was like,
Yeah.
where's Dad?
Gordo was like that. I worked all weekend and then yesterday I was off and he was attached to me all day. And I was
Nice.
like, you were so sad. I worked for 8.5 hours for 2 days in a row. You're like, this doesn't normally happen.
Yeah. I know, and cats are usually a little bit more um standoffish. You know what I mean? Like
It
not as
can
much as
be, yeah.
dogs. Yeah, more so than dogs will be like, I don't know. you know. Um all right. So, yeah, this begins with more spiritualism. And it was talking about how in the 1910s and 20s, Arthur Conan Doyle's books and other works helped to drive the second coming of spiritualism. That's what she said. For their part, the Fox sisters may have driven part of the first wave of spiritualism. Of
Okay.
course, with other things being a factor. But yeah, yeah. So mine's also in the 1800s, just in America, whereas yours was in the UK, right?
No, it was in the US. In
Oh, it was in Chesterfield, fucking Indiana, right?
yeah, in Chicago.
Chesterfield.
A lot in Chicago. I think that's where they were mainly out of.
Oh, that's right. Okay, never mind. I don't know. I had the UK in my head then. um. So yeah, I only heard this in one other place, I think, but they were just born outside of Bath in New Brunswick, just near the Maine border, north of Woodstock, and I did not know that because most things just say they're from upstate New York.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, I mean they do move there pretty quickly. So the Fox family was the mom Margaret, the dad John, and their four kids: David, Leah. I believe those two were the older because Leah lived away from home, and then Margaret, or Maggie, as she's mostly called, and Kate. And Kate and Maggie are the main players. But again, we don't know their exact dates of birth or ages, kind of like
Yeah.
yours. Apparently, they didn't take as much care around then. But oh shit! Now that I notice I have a typo because mine says Kate was born around 133, but I think that meant 1833. And
I kept
Maggie,
trying to put 19 instead of 18, like 1888. I'd be like
yes,
1988. Damn it, no.
all the
Wrong.
time.
Wrong
Who would write?
century.
No, exactly. We're not used to writing a century behind in our dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kate was probably born around 1833, and Maggie was born around 1839.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess there's a few years between them. But they then moved to a farm near Hydesville in Wayne County, New York, in about 1847. So that's what most people, like I said, say they're just from New York. And at that time, Kate was around 11 years old and Maggie was about 14, if we assume we know their dates of birth. And by the next year, the family had experienced such strange sounds so frequently that they were becoming known to their neighbors. Sorry. By March 31st of 1848, the family were so fed up that the girls were sent to bed early one night, and the parents were just trying to rest quietly. But basically, as soon as the girls were sent to bed and started to fall asleep, the noises in the house would just begin again. And they heard more and more rappings and tappings louder and faster. Um, Sometimes it would seem to follow the girls around the house, and they felt it could have been demonic or just malevolent at least. So at one point, they called over the neighbors to confirm that they were not crazy, kind of thing. And William Dusler was a neighbor who came over. The girls were like, "You gotta come over and see what the hell."
Yeah.
Come over. I guess that's what they said. It says they just accosted him on the street in one thing. But they would, like, anyone was able to ask aloud a few questions and get some answers, some knocks, like, "Oh, give me 5 knocks," and they'd be like, "Okay," or like, "2
Yeah.
knocks if yes," blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. And apparently, through these kind of questions, they discovered that the spirit was apparently a murder victim. So, he had been a 31-year-old peddler, apparently killed for the $500 he had on him, and buried under the house by a previous tenant.
That sucks.
Yeah, it's like, oh, cool, cool, cool. No wonder you're sticking around. Like you're pissed.
Yeah.
The family's not often talked about son David suggested using a numerical code to go through the alphabet to spell out the words. Not Morse code, but probably like A equals 1, B equals 2, or something like that.
Okay.
More
That's
simple.
fair.
Yeah, at least that's what I understand it to be. But apparently they never did get a name that they could check or corroborate or anything.
Well, I guess if you get to the end of the alphabet and it's like 26 knocks, you'd be kind of like, fuck, 1, 2, 3.
Like, we don't
This is
know.
too difficult. No.
Not the best form of communication.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Um, as one article indicated, meanwhile, revolution raged across Western Europe. The Mexican-American War had ended, and the gold rush came to California and later to Canada. These were the times.
Yeah.
This form of communication between the sisters and the spirits became known as the Rochester rappings, as we'll see, because they end up in Rochester, New York. Basically, that's all it is. Then wannabes tried to imitate them at every turn, jumping on the spiritualism bandwagon and trying to cash in. Just
Yeah.
imagine. Just women trying to make money for themselves. No, I don't know. But,
Right?
in any way they know how. They're like the first, all these people, like your sisters too. They're like the first influencers and people that
Yeah.
can make money off their own
Trend.
shit. Right? Whether it's like real or not, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was a lot going on in California and all over the world, but on the East Coast there was mostly just the Fox sisters in the news. So their eldest sister, Leah, had been working as a school chest. Nope. That's not a word. A school chester?
Teacher?
Yeah, that's the one. Leah had been working as a school teacher in Rochester, New York. One of her students happened to read an article to the class that talked about her sister's famous rappings and spiritual tappings in the home.
Can you imagine if that was your teacher? Your teacher would just suddenly become so cool. That's your sisters.
Apparently they had no idea that they were reading out loud to the sister
That's pretty
in
cool.
question.
For show and tell today.
The what sisters? Oh, okay. But yeah, she heard about that. Whether or not, regardless of the manner she heard about it, she came home to visit the older sister Leah and found that the family had moved to David's house to get away from the looky-loos that were bothering them at their haunted home or whatever. And Leah saw this all as an opportunity to capitalize on their growing notoriety, in my opinion. And I think she was a little worldlier and savvier than the parents, and decides that they can like make some money off this and charge some people. So, that's how they move kind of from stuff in the house to like your ladies a little bit more in the show sense. Like they're displaying their talents in different places. And then they start to charge for it. So they get a new house and live there, and then they offer seances for $1. And then they move up to stage shows and eventually get on the road. But at first, the more they grew famous, the more they had some skeptics that were quite nasty to them. And once Maggie was the victim of a kidnapping attempt by men who were just offended by their show. So,
are you serious?
Yeah.
They attempted to kidnap her?
Yeah, I don't know what for, but
that's insane. Oh my god.
That part is like, oh, okay. They were really threatened.
Yeah. Their poor fragile egos. Can't handle not knowing.
No. I know they have, and there's a lot to get into with them. I have some quotes later because honestly, at first it was quite short for me. It was like maybe like 4 pages, and then I added some quotes, and then it was like 7. So then, or something like that, because I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, mine was
people what they're used to.
Mine was kind of short until I added the like excerpt, and I was like, "There's a page and a half."
And sometimes they're good too. But yeah, it can add to the story, especially if it
Yeah. I was like, it was
has
so
some
dramatically written. I
detail.
loved it. I was like, yes, I'm keeping this. I gots to.
Yeah, you had some good quotes. um, by 1849, they had kind of begun to tire of the fame. Probably not the fortune, but at least the fame. I don't know.
The
And during one,
paparazzi.
yeah. I think they're okay with the money. I would be.
I would love the money. Give me the money. Donate to
Show me the
Patreon. We
money.
would love the money.
Exactly. During one seance, they spelled out, "We will now bid you farewell," as if the spirits were just going to retire, which I just love.
That's cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah, but that didn't really happen. That was 1849. And by 1850, rapping, the
Don't act.
rappings, the tappings was a full-on craze.
I think I had heard that
Yeah.
before.
It
The
it
knocking and
ties into
stuff.
yours. Like, people are having
Yeah.
shows, they're supposedly mediums who are tapping in, talking to the spirits in whatever
And
way.
then Stomp came and they were like, and they're just
And
like,
then
the
what?
spirits. Stomp. The
Stop.
like
Oh yeah.
hands on the stage.
We can't hear nothing.
Yeah.
Spirits, we don't know what they're saying.
The spirits are talking too fast now. Coming through Stomp the Yard.
Oh my god. Yeah, apparently hundreds of people were tapping into their ghost whisperer side.
Gosh.
Quote, the New Haven Journal reported that there were 40 families in upstate New York who claimed to have the same gifts as the Foxes, and
Oh,
hundreds more ranging from Virginia to Ohio, end quote.
wow. Yeah, that is a fad.
Yeah. Oh, it worked for them. I mean, why wouldn't you? They then, I guess, traveled to New York City to hold some bigger seance shows. um, and by 1851, the spiritual world reported that 100 plus mediums lived in New York City alone.
Oh God.
New York or New York City, something like that. Um, here's the famous people: Thomas Edison, anti-slavery advocate leader William Lloyd Garrison, plus many prominent women's rights advocates based in Rochester, which was the Fox's sisters' adopted hometown, all joined the movement. Just some name dropping.
Yeah.
Still, science was spreading steadily across North America, along with modern technology like the railroads and the telegraphs, Morse code. And while spiritualism on one hand I think was seen as sort of superstitious, on the other hand, it's like it was part of the new technology movement almost. It could have been seen as like a new
Okay.
science or a new pseudoscience. Like, you know what I mean? We were
That's
learning so
fair.
many things. Like, if we could, I think they were point most things we're trying to get across. If you can talk to someone at the drop of a hat across the world, all of a sudden now, why couldn't you talk to someone across the void that's dead or whatever?
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, I don't really understand.
Yeah, we know a lot more
Like,
now.
well, I've talked
But
before about how I don't quite understand how record players are able to work. I also don't really
oh,
understand how, like,
true.
landline phones quite work. Like,
You might as well tell me it's all like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where you can make the
yeah.
chocolate bar into this little tiny
Yeah.
chocolate bar that comes out on the other side. And I'd be like, sure, that's how we do television.
Right? Like, I
don't
understand
know.
how you could transmit noise, I guess, over wires and, like, have, like, an audio and a receiver, but I don't.
We don't
Yeah, I don't
have
know.
to. That's the beauty of the collective mind, is that over the generations, we learn how to do things But then we don't have to know how to build a rocket because someone else does.
Oh, yeah.
We just got to keep trusting that we're learning things, and I don't know. Don't get me started. Not focus on all the bad shit, I guess.
Yeah.
This is all the things we're doing wrong. Okay, guys, that doesn't help anything.
Right?
Yeah. uh, so yeah, it was a magical time. Telegraphs, connecting people at the a touch of a button, a metal button. But many of them were still very suspicious of the girls and their shows, especially when they would talk to different spirits, and people would notice how often they would have very famous spirits like Benjamin Franklin that came to to speak to
Okay.
them.
I mean, that's fair. That's a very fair question.
He was always available. And also, like, they said his grammar had really taken a downturn since he was resurrected. Apparently he was just well spoken before that, and they were like, wow, he's a real, I don't know.
He's dropping so many F-bombs. Benjamin, no!
He's a real illiterate now. I don't know if that was funny, but at one show, people placed cushions underneath their feet to make sure that they weren't doing anything untoward or, unbelievable. And
So, like, they
at
weren't, like,
tapping.
clipping their shoes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because of course most people thought they were tapping because, I mean, come on. They were tapping. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's obvious yet, but with those stories, a lot of times the people are making up a lot of shit. Like, so the night that they couldn't reproduce the spiritual noises, the rappings and the tappings, because the cushions were placed under their feet, they also said that it must have been the heavy, heavy air of skepticism, and the seriousness and all of that was just permeating the space. And that, of course, the spirits couldn't commune during that. So
They have a headache.
that was all well and convenient. But I want to believe these girls. I do. I don't think you talked about this, but maybe because it was called is a Society for the Diffusion of Spiritual Knowledge that was established in 1855.
Oh, no.
Okay. Sometimes when people say big long words and names, I might zone out. So I was like, ah. Apparently this was to sponsor free public sittings. But most of the things they did was to make money off it. It seems to me. One thing said that Kate was going pretty hard by then. Well, that's my words, but, quote, her seances came to feature not only rappings, but music materialization, spirit writing, and other manifestations. Which sounds less impressive now that I know that your girls, like, had total paintings, because now I want to know what these other manifestations were.
One of the things I left out was one of the people that was how they said that they were able to recreate it, and how the two blank canvases were supposedly put like facing each other, and then they would be kind of clamped together and then placed at a window so that the sun would shine through so you could see it like materializing the portrait or whatever.
That is elaborate.
They were talking about how, and I didn't really understand it, but a bunch of them were saying, well, if one of the pictures had already been painted and you did that you wouldn't have seen it somehow and the light still would have gone through. And I was like, but how? Like, if you have paint on there, the light would no longer go through the paint, would it not? And then I was like, you'd immediately be able to see it because, like, the sun's shining through it. And I was getting confused, so I left all
Yeah.
that stuff out and was like, I don't fucking know. And they're like, but on the reverse, if you turned it around and that one was the one that was facing the sitter instead of that one being facing the sitter, it would work. And it was like, what the
I
fuck does this
mean,
even mean anymore? I couldn't
it
follow it.
sounds good on first inspection.
Yeah.
But then I feel like someone's trying to convince you that they're like, well, no, I couldn't have got you pregnant because you were already pregnant before. Just something of that kind of reach. I
And
don't
then,
know.
but my favorites were reading the ones that were like, we theorized that one of the women in their big puffy skirts carried this. And it's, keep in mind, these portraits are basically like life size. They're like 3 to 4 feet big. Like,
Oh
and stuff. And they're
no.
like, they
The Schitt's
smuggled them
Creek
in.
one where they have the family and it's like
Yeah.
so big.
They're like, they clearly smuggled them into the room under their skirt. And I was like, what?
Okay.
And I was like,
All right.
yeah, just hold on. You sit there. Let me lift up my skirt in the 1800s and show you my underwear while I pull out a whole 4-foot canvas painting. Like, fuck.
Talk about a stretch.
Yeah, I was like, that's kind of insane that's real. You want so hard not to believe that they could able to do this. They think they're smuggling 3-foot long paintings under their skirts.
Yeah, yeah. That's hard to believe.
Right? Because they said, like, when the pictures were done, they were still wet to the touch and stuff, so you had to be careful with them. And then, like, and then another thing said that even the poorest of quality portraits that you could possibly paint with, like, a full scenery background and everything would take at least 5 hours, and that would be, like, a terrible portrait. Like, most people, it took like a
Yeah.
number of days working like 8 hours a day for you to make a portrait of almost the quality that they supposedly were in,
Yeah,
like,
because you're just painting
sometimes
their
like 20
likeness.
minutes or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway,
It was
it's just
definitely
like,
different.
yeah.
It's not just like, boom, that's what you look like. What?
There's an
Back then,
orb in
you're
the
like,
corner.
you didn't make me look
Ectoplasm.
good. You could have painted in the good light. That's just what it was.
Yeah.
You should have painted me in a better light. That was a terrible angle. Like, they had to choose all the things.
Contour my
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
No, you get powder wig white. Everybody. Everybody's
a
as
good
pasty as
candid.
can be.
But some people can paint well and capture
Yeah.
that like candid, or like my mom's really good at like taking photos. I'm like, when did you take that? And then yet, here's a photo of you guys like mid laugh or hanging out together or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
never get photos like that. I'm always like, pose, or like I don't know how else to get them, and she gets
Yeah.
these like nice candid photos.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I'm not
love
good at that
it.
either.
I have one that we took it up. I just rearranged some photos in my fridge, so I took it off the fridge for now, but my mom had it kind of like blown up and a little bit of a bigger than normal photo and with a border. And it was rain when she was just like 10 at the most, like 8, 9, whatever. And then there's this one beach in New Brunswick that's just like it's like very muddy, like places where you go and they have like natural clay. It's like that,
Yeah.
but it's like, and we used to go there and have fun and like play around, and you can go there to swim because it's not that kind of beach, but we would go and like play in like the soft like mud, and it's just rain like making these big ass like footsteps through like the mud, and it looks so cute. And
Hmm.
we're like,
Nice.
oh, we should frame that because it's already like she blew it up for us. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm working on that and framing the one that my sister got me that says Lady Alanna.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the Fox sisters. By the 1860s, they had been doing this thing for a while, and they were both feeling the pressure. The 1870s. I know. I'm like, what? spiritualism had caught on in England, which made it arguably, as one source put it, the first American cultural export to conquer the old motherland, meaning it
Oh,
was from America and it came back to Britain. Yeah, I thought
okay.
that was interesting. And their older sister Leah, who had become like their manager, had
Yeah.
gone from being a single mom school teacher, whatever, to a venerable society lady and the wife of a Wall Street banker. So she was doing
Oh
well.
shit.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
She momagered them real good. And it honestly is
Nice.
weird. It's like the parents go out of the picture almost. It's like
Yeah.
they move in with the older sister. I think everybody abandons the house in New York, and
Wow.
they're like, "Oh, it's haunted." They just leave. So
Hmm.
it's like, okay.
Weird.
Um so Maggie had actually met Arctic explorer Elisha Kent Kane at the age of 18. This is just, he seems kind of interesting too. He was an author, naval officer, and surgeon who was known as being an American explorer. He was like exploring the Arctic, and at this kind of time where I think
Mm-hmm.
people were still mapping out the South Pole and stuff. Like, I was just listening to something today about how some people were racing to get to the South Pole first. Like, like, things were still being
Yeah.
mapped out. I don't know. Sounds, I don't know, interesting. I could see why she was attracted to him. But he thought that she could do much better with her life than just being in spiritualism, and he encouraged her to get an education. In fact, really, really wanted that, and also just kept promising to marry Maggie one day, but wouldn't seem to do it. He did exchange rings with her, but his family didn't like her, so he promised to marry her for real after he got back from his next excursion that he was going on. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so this was. I found out a little bit more about him. There was from I think this was from Britannica. Having decided to pursue a career in civil engineering, Elisha Kent Kane entered the University of Virginia at Charlottesville in 1837. The following year, however, a severe attack of rheumatic fever forced him to withdraw and left him with a permanently damaged heart. That sounds so sad. Sorry.
Yeah.
A small, slight man, Kane possessed a courage and stamina which helped him to overcome this handicap and which served him well in later years. In the fall of 1839, he began the study of medicine at the University of Pennsylvania in his native Philadelphia, and after a residency in the hospital of the Blockley Almshouse, he graduated in March of 1842. So he's pretty smart.
And then he became an explorer instead.
Yeah, he learned
He's an
some things.
engineer and
He
then
had
he's a doctor. Now he's an explorer. What can't he do?
true. I know. I'm kind of like into it. They seem like a good match. But yeah, it's good. Yeah, I guess it would be good to be a surgeon on some of those expeditions too.
Yeah.
Um, he had gone. Oh, I know. I wouldn't say I fell down his rabbit hole, but I just have a little bit more on him because he was pretty interesting. Also, um, he went on expeditions to the Arctic in 1850 to look for another explorer who had never returned, named Sir John Franklin. And that was in 1845, so they were like, this guy never came back. It's been like 5 years. If you can find him, great. And
Yeah.
when trying to find passage through the ice to search and explore further north from Baffin Bay to the Polar Sea, their journey hit some snags. So yeah, this is definitely in sort of the northern Canada region, but during a winter that saw temperatures drop to minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 of the 60 dogs that Kane had acquired for his sledging operations died of Arctic canine hysteria,
Oh no.
whatever that is.
I
And
don't
all
want to
mem-
know. It sounds awful.
I know. And all members of the expedition suffered to a greater or less degree from scurvy and malnutrition.
Jeez.
Sorry. After I wrote these notes, though, I did listen to a recent night class episode today where it was talking about the two teams and their race to the South Pole. And that was really interesting and kind of makes me think of this because there was like, they took
Yeah.
dogs, some of them took ponies, and they were just both trying to get there first, which was kind of irrelevant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also made me think of the magicians because movie minute, no. But in the magicians books, one of the magical tests they can go through is like fourth year magical college, whatever, is that like they have to use their magic to go by themselves from this point to the
Yes,
South
that was
Pole.
fucked
It
up.
was, but I wondered if this was an inspiration, I guess, you know?
Maybe. I think
Because
they
they were
in the
like,
books they had to
they're
like
both
cast or something to
racing.
keep themselves warm or they'd
Yeah,
freeze to
and like
death.
these
It's like what
these
the
groups
fuck?
were
These
just
are
trying to
like
keep themselves warm and leave themselves food and shit. Like they didn't know what they were doing. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's
I didn't mean to interrupt. um and oh god. Yeah, so that Maggie's love didn't do so well. In the course of Kane's extensive travels, he had contracted a number of different maladies, including rice fever, cholera, apparently, in brackets,
yeah.
in China, plague or typhoid fever in Egypt,
Oh
coast
god.
fever, bacterial septicemia
Yeah.
in West Africa, and scurvy several times in the Arctic. On his return to the United States in 1855, he was in very poor health. He nevertheless rapidly completed his account of the expedition, Arctic Explorations, the second Grinnell expedition in search of Sir John Franklin, and then visited England in late 1856. Proceeding next to Cuba, where he hoped to find relief from his chronic illness, he died there on 16th of February 1857 after 2 severe strokes. Kane was
Ooh.
given a grand public funeral in Philadelphia as America's first great Arctic explorer and was buried in Laurel Hill Cemetery. And although Kane was never publicly married, it said he had had a continuing association with the spiritualist Margaret Fox from 1855 to 1857, and after his death she claimed to have been his wife, end quote.
So they were only together even if they were for 2 years? Okay.
That's what that source said,
Huh.
yeah. Other ones made it seem longer.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not very long.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
They were very serious, though. Also, he was only 36.
Oh shit. An engineer, a doctor, and an explorer of the Arctic by 36.
I know. I know everybody says, like, oh, they're gonna die when they're 50 then, but, like, not necessarily. But what was sad? What was sad? Because his family refused to acknowledge her as his partner after he died. And even more depressingly, would not allow her to attend his funeral.
Mm.
Really just seems shitty in my opinion, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like they didn't want to acknowledge her at all. And so later she published a book of his love letters called The Love Life of Dr. Kane. So I think that was maybe her like little revenge
Oh,
almost.
that's
Yeah.
cute.
Because basically after that she had converted to Roman Catholicism and kind of started backing away from the seances and that. Because remember, like he wanted her to get away from that and get an education and whatever, even though like Honestly, I think financially she was doing fine, but
Yeah.
whatever. He wanted more for her. But after his death, she was depressed and all that happened. And then she started to drink more. And so, it just wasn't good for her. Um, oh, sorry. Get the sisters mixed up for a second. Okay, so that was Maggie. And Kate got married also to Henry D. Jenkin in 1872. Which said that Kate, meanwhile, married a devout spiritualist and continued to develop her medium powers, translating spirit messages in astonishing and unprecedented ways, communicating two messages simultaneously, writing one while speaking the other, transcribing messages in reverse script, utilizing blank cards upon which words seem to spontaneously appear. During sessions with a wealthy banker, Charles Livermore, she summoned both the man's deceased wife and the ghost of Benjamin Franklin, who announced his identity
Good
by
old
writing his name on a
Benjamin
card.
Franklin. Good old Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, Ben.
Her
And
best
her
friend.
business her business boomed during and after the Civil War as increasing numbers of the bereaved found solace in
Yeah.
spiritualism. Prominent spiritualist Emma Harding wrote that the war added 2 million new believers to the movement. Ouch. And by the 1880s, there were an estimated 8 million spiritualists in the United States and Europe. These
Yeah, I
new
remember
practitioners, sorry.
I remember talking about that when I did the history of the Ouija boards, that people were so
Yeah,
desperate to contact loved ones and everything that yeah, spiritualism became a huge thing, and the Ouija
it
boards and
makes
everything too.
it makes sense. It makes sense. Also, I think someone said Ouija boards today and something about Milton Parker, and I was like, or Milton Bradley. And I was like, no, I think it's Parker Brothers. And then I had to look it up, and I was like, yes, they own it.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I learned something. No. I liked your Ouija board segment.
It was fascinating looking into it. Yeah.
Oh my god. That stuff is so neat. Um oh sorry, to continue with this really long quote. These new practitioners, seduced by the flamboyance of the Gilded Age, expected miracles, like Kate summoning a full-fledged apparitions at every séance. It was wearying both to the movement and to Kate herself, and she too began to drink. End quote. Um, so they had several children together, but um, although they had been living abroad in England, and then by 1885, I think they had moved back to the US, her children were then taken away due to her struggles with alcohol addiction. So it's very sad.
Okay.
Yeah, both the sisters really struggled with that, it seemed. At first I was like, okay, but no, the one did better. And then I was like, no, they both really struggled. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they took on more than they could chew.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's just get into it. In 1888, because that's apparently the year that we're going to talk about today, because you mentioned it several times,
Yeah.
which, yeah, it was just like, oh, weird. On October 21st, 1888, the New York World published an interview with Maggie Fox in anticipation of her appearance that evening at the New York Academy of Music, where she would publicly denounce spiritualism. She was
Oh,
paid,
shit.
yeah. Uh-huh. She was paid $1,500 for the exclusive. Her main motivation, however, was rage at her sister Leah and other leading spiritualists who had publicly chastised Kate for her drinking and accused her of being unable to care for her two young children. Kate
Hmm.
planned to be in the audience when Maggie gave her speech, lending her tacit support. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, nothing.
I have long quotes in here because for once I was kind of padding my episode a little because it was very short when I was done my notes, which was weird. But that's okay. We're almost done. She said, "My sister Katie and myself were very young children when this horrible deception began." Maggie said, "At night when we went to bed, we used to tie an apple on a string and move the string up and down, causing the apple to bump on the floor, or we would drop the apple on the floor, making a strange noise every time it would rebound." Sorry.
All right then.
I know the apple thing is just so random. The sisters graduated from apple dropping to manipulating their knuckles, joints, and toes to make rapping sounds. Which
Oh.
I can crack my knuckles.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like somebody knocking.
Not usually.
Like, I can probably crack. Hold on. Nope. There's one.
Oh, yeah,
All my others are already cracked, so.
I can probably do a bunch at once.
Yeah. I could never do that. I could never, like, quite get
I
that.
do the whole, all the fingers. Also, I think someone said there was, like, the longest multiple joint popping world record, and and then I just heard they popped like 27 joints in a row and it just went like pop 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 pop. It sounded like you were listening to something disgusting. I was like, what?
It probably felt amazing though.
Probably. It's probably also not great. But it does feel so good. Yeah, I remember hearing about this on And That's Why We Drink, and Christine went like, "Oh, don't you know, Em, I can literally do that popping with my toes." And Em went, "What?" And then she was gross.
I can pop my big toe, but just by like curling it and it'll pop. The rest of them I'd have to like squeeze with my fingers, and I did it for a little while. I was doing it, but it hurt, especially like pinky toe and stuff. So I completely stopped cracking my toes.
Toes are different. They're not as easy to crack as the fingers.
Yeah.
I find. A great many people, when they hear the rapping, imagine at once that the spirits are touching them, she explained. It is a very common delusion. Some very wealthy people came to see me some years ago when I lived in 42nd Street, and I did some rappings for them. I made the spirit rap on the chair, and one of the ladies cried out, "I feel the spirit rapping me on the shoulder." Of course, that was pure imagination.
Yeah.
Pure imagination. No. Suggestibility is key, I guess. But then apparently she offered a demonstration, removing her shoe and placing her right foot upon a wooden stool. And this is at she's confessing this on stage, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, she's just like giving it up. Placed her foot on a stool. The room fell silent and still and was rewarded with a number of short little raps. There stood a black-robed, sharp-faced widow, the New York Herald reported, working her big toe and sullenly declaring that it was in this way she created the excitement that has driven so many persons to suicide or insanity.
Oh my god.
One moment it was ludicrous, the next it was weird.
She's wiggling her big toe on a stage. And everybody paid to see it.
Right? This is what you like.
Women's feet.
Yeah. OnlyFans. Maggie insisted that her sister Leah knew that the rappings were fake all along and greedily exploited her younger sisters. Before exiting the stage, she thanked God that she was able to expose spiritualism. But believers were quick to discount her confession, citing her issues with alcohol and money, etc. And they said that she sold out for the money she made at the show and was lying. Because she was paid for that appearance, I guess. I don't know.
But I mean, that would, like, ruin her whole career, so if she's what,
I
nobody's
mean,
ever gonna hire her again, and nobody's ever gonna pay her again, so what's the benefit of getting your one shot of $1,500? Like,
it makes no sense. If people don't believe you, then you're lying. But if people do believe you, then you're
then
I
you're
don't know.
lying.
You're lying. Yeah. Um Whatever her motive, Maggie recanted her confession 1 year later, insisting that her spirit guides had beseeched her to do so. Sorry, this one's a bit of a quote also. I do write words like beseeched. Don't you forget it. But
I wouldn't. I never would.
I don't use that in casual conversation either.
No.
Her reversal prompted more disgust from devoted spiritualists, many of whom failed to recognize her at a subsequent debate at the Manhattan Liberal Club.
Oh no! Gasp.
There, under the pseudonym Mrs. Spencer, Maggie revealed several tricks of the profession. Ooh, tricks of the trade. Including the way mediums wrote messages on blank slates by using their teeth or feet. This is part of a quote, so I have no more information. But it made me think of yours,
Teeth,
because
feet, but
using your teeth
like,
or feet. Yeah, I don't know. Because at what point would that disguise the fact that you're writing something if you're using your teeth or
not
your
with your
feet?
hand.
You're obviously still writing.
Yeah. If you're
Probably
in
it's even harder and it's even more
Yeah, if
so
you're sitting there
obvious.
across from somebody and they're like watching you, how are you gonna get away with writing with your teeth? What the heck? Let me
I
chew
know.
on some chalk.
Are they in a cabinet? Because remember, yours had sometimes they were like covered with a curtain or something. I've heard ones where they're like,
At the
"Let me just
beginning, the
perform this
paintings were.
act." Oh, okay. 'Cause sometimes I've
Yeah.
seen where people are like, and then we went into this cabinet, and it's kind of like a magic
Yeah.
trick. You're like, yeah, we don't know what happened.
And then I drew with my feet.
Yeah.
Weird.
All right, just to close this out. Unfortunately, they said she never reconciled with Sister Leah, who died in 1890. Kate died 2 years later while on a drinking spree.
Oh.
And Maggie passed away 8 months later in March of 1893. That year, spiritualists formed the National Spiritualist Association, which today is known as the National Spiritualist Association of Churches.
Oh
That was
shit.
hard. That was
Of
hard to say.
churches.
I'm sorry. National Spiritualist Association of Churches. Try it with me.
No thanks.
And unfortunately, they received no fanfare or special memorial seance upon their deaths, unlike Arthur Conan Doyle had. And we have had
Hmm.
no contact with them after death ever since. That is the end of my case.
Yeah. It's so sad how, like, I guess the last decades of their lives, like,
Yeah,
really just seem to go downhill so much.
it's true. You're like, okay, did they have a hand in this? Because, like, okay, I don't know if it ever became clear or I ever said it, but one thing I read said they were like, it was basically just an April Fool's joke. They're like, we just started doing it just to piss off our mom and just to fuck with
Yeah.
her, right? And then it's like, okay, but it became so much more than that. And then like
Yeah.
it became like your whole lives, which is pretty crazy. So at that point, like you
Yeah.
don't have control of it anymore. I think maybe at the beginning, like they
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, we have control over this," but then it's like, I don't think you do anymore, which kind of sucks.
Yeah,
But
because they could have backtracked and been like, we were kids.
right.
Yeah.
Also, didn't you say something about Ouija board a minute ago? Because
Yeah.
I think it came up in something earlier, and then I quickly Googled it because I was like, Oh yeah, because I was like, oh, it's Parker Brothers, not Milton Bradley or whatever the fuck I was saying to the podcast I was listening to. And then I was like, yeah, it is. And then as I was reading the quick article, skimming it for the information on what company it was, I was like, oh my god, they just mentioned the Fox sisters. Like
Yeah.
they're
They came
they're
up
so
quite a bit, I
entangled.
remember.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know. It's almost like being, yeah, you're famous for being a fraud, kind of, but
Yeah. It's weird.
it's kind of good in a way because if it moves along people's consciousness, and I think spiritualism was a cool concept, and obviously, like, you know, it
Yeah.
caught on. There's like woo woo things today and all that stuff. So I think it was all right. Didn't really hurt too many people in my case.
No, and a lot of people, I think, got closure and nice messages that
Yeah.
they perceived to be from loved ones and everything that gave them
Yeah.
a sort of comfort, especially in times of war when you aren't hearing from
True.
people or they die and you may not have a body to
Yes.
bury or something.
Right. Right. Which is, you know, kind of like why people want to have religion or something, because it's like it's very important and it helps you
Yeah.
through those times. And yeah, means a lot. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know. That was different.
Yeah.
But oh, there were so many more. I was like, this one reminds me of the one I heard about called Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which is apparently mongoose spirit living in people's walls. And I think that one's out of the UK.
The
And
fuck?
I was just like, oh, I know there's more weird things like this that we could talk about if we can find the
Yeah.
time. But I enjoyed this one, so I'm glad you decided that we could do it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, we'll have to revisit it again.
Oh, for sure. There's so many cool paranormal things. But, well, next week we're doing, a crime one, Filipino crimes. So I guess we'll see you for that
Yeah.
one. Hell
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
An international true crime episode.
I know, I always learn something because I never know anything about the criminals
Right?
until I look it up. Yeah.
I figured out who I'm covering, and I feel like anybody that is a repeat listener will not be surprised with who I choose.
Really? Yeah, there was I looked at a short list and I was like, some of these are interesting. You know?
Yeah.
Ooh, this seems dark. Maybe I should
Yeah.
leave this. Maybe I left it and then you're like, I'm gonna go for it.
I want to pick it up.
Because, yeah, someone came up in my short list called Baby Amma or something, and I was like, that's a weird name. But I wonder if that's the same one that you picked.
No, but
Okay.
I did read a little blurb about that, and then it had like a picture with it, and I think the little blurb they
Maybe.
had right up about it was really poorly written because it made absolutely no
Mm.
sense. So I scrolled past it after I read it. I was like, what even was that?
Yeah, that can be the way it is because you can't always
Yeah.
find information about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I'm excited then. I will look forward to hearing what you're covering next week.
Yes.
Oh, in the meantime, keep it cryptic.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Okay. What the fuck episode is this? 102? Oh,
Yeah.
oh my god.
Don't you wake up, Gordo. Ugh.
Oh no. He was sleeping?
Yeah, and then I blew my nose and woke him up. He was like, ah! What was that?
What a light sleeper. I can walk
Yeah,
around the dog, and he's like, eh.
yeah, what a baby. You're such a baby. Little boy. He's still technically a baby for his breed for at least another 6 months or so.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
probably never grow out of
until he's
that.
until he's probably 3, and then he should kind of have settled into what his behavior will be like as an adult cat.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't try and put him in that box, Mom. I don't feel
Well,
like an
he
adult. Pet problems. This has been
yeah.
pet problems with castles and cryptids.
Castles and cryptids and pet problems.
This has been Castles and Cryptids. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and our YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. On our website, you can listen to all of our episodes as well as view pictures for each of our segments. Check out our Patreon page to view all of our tiers and become a Patreon supporter today to unlock monthly bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes content. We are working on an Ask Us Anything. You can submit questions by social media or by email at castlesandcryptids@gmail.com. Do you have a spooky ghost story, a creepy cryptid sighting, or a thrilling true crime tale you would like to share and have us include in a future episode? Send us your listener story by social media or by email. Please include the name that you would like mentioned. Our music is by Kobe Fair. Our logo and artwork is by Antonio Garcia. Thanks for listening.